Hello, Gina. It's great to join us from Brussels. In this case, we are very global, very international today, as you can see. You will talk about a bit different perspective from the European point of view, maybe. And when I looked at your presentation, you promise an achievable utopia, a little bit of it at least. The concept of Bildung is very interesting to us. Maybe the word vzgoja in Slovenian is vzgoja odraslih. In addition to education of adults, Bildung of adults. Please, Gina, tell us more. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, Svonka, for introducing me and inviting me. And yes, you're absolutely right. And I really love your summary of an achievable utopia, because I think that describes it very well. I'm going to share a presentation as well, but I'm not really, oops. Yes, okay, great. I'm not going to read it to you, so I think you are able to download it from the website, or you'll receive it after the the forum is over. Yeah. So you can read up the details afterwards, and some of and check some of the links if you're interested. Now, the title is "Can we transform the future with adult education?" obviously. And this is a topic that is quite important to us in EAEA, because I mean, it's very clear many people, when they hear the term adult education or adult learning, whichever way we describe it in our languages, many people see it as a repair shop. That means, let's say, schools have not been successful in teaching people how to read, how to write, how to calculate, how to understand certain things. And then we in adult education take these people on and provide what they missed in the past, or add things in order to catch up with technology, changes in economics and so on. Now, this is, of course, a very important part of adult education, and, basic skills and so on. But for us, this is only a part. And there are, unfortunately, quite a few people, and we would hope that more people, more potential learners, but also policymakers, understand that adult education can do so much more. And that is also help shape the future, help to transform individuals, communities, and so on. Now, let me, oops, does that now work? Okay, no, that does not work that way. So give me a moment. Yep. I'll quickly stop sharing, go back to the presentation and move on. And
you take your time, Gina. I actually forgot to introduce you. You're the General Secretary of the European Association for the Education of Adults. And of course, our Andragogic Society, our institute, and some other providers of adult education are members. You have around 130 members from all over Europe, from 43 countries. And you are also, like Katarina, a lifelong learner, but also lecturer, teacher to others, and especially an advocate for adult learning and lifelong learning. And you even succeeded now with the technical issues. So Go
Okay.
on, please.
Yes, it's not perfect, but
It's fine.
it
It's
will
fine.
work.
Mm.
So yes, we did a number of projects on this issue of transformation, of changing, of coping, but also having an influence on how we work. And I'm taking the most important parts from that for the presentation. So we had a project called Future Lab, which was all about change-oriented adult learning and education. We were talking about individual change, but also social change. So, and it's based on a collective empowerment that is based on critical awareness, new ways of thinking, and active participation. So we want to encourage those approaches. And it's a conscious realization of the learner working together, and that should be about taking action, including potential acts of resistance. And I mean, you have heard Katharina give some really good examples of that. And towards all this towards a more democratic, equal, and ethical world. So you already see, while it is the utopia, we are already looking into how can we achieve that. And if you're interested in some of the examples and other contacts, you have here the link for more materials. Okay, yes, and I'm back to, yep. Yep. Okay, the next slide I'm going to present is about the why, but again, it's Katharina has already summarized quite a bit of you. Do we want, I mean, in a way, we're talking about developing better individuals. Now, not better in a sense of, you know, a mold, you know, equally reacting people, but making communities, organizations, and society or the world a different and better place. And for that, we need people who can achieve that. And again, the change can happen at different levels. And what we need to do is looking at and analyzing for ourselves, and in learning, experienced or observed social problems. I mean, we often see them, but we don't understand the context. Then, of course, political system, which are undemocratic and open to dangers of populism. And we see that increasingly in Europe. We're talking about poverty, austerity policies, economic and gender inequalities, destructive ways of behaving and thinking, or also on political objectives that are not necessarily good or supported by a majority of people. And really the question is, how and by whom do we define the need for change, whether it's peaceful or radical? So this is a bit the context. I think I will have to do the little exercise of hopping around again, but that's, yes. Now, you've heard, and I'm not quite sure how the translation does it, but I'm talking more about democracy rather than active citizenship. Of course, it's not a contradiction. It's a slightly different approach. In a way, one thing that I found really interesting was I was at a discussion in Germany on, there it's called, there they have the term politische Bildung. So Bildung for, or education training for a political understanding, civic education. And someone was saying, you know, the term active citizenship is a bit problematic for me because there are a lot of people who are active, but they're very undemocratic. And to a certain extent, that is true. I mean, I'm originally from Austria, although I live in Belgium. And what we've seen in Austria is now lots of demonstrations against the COVID measures, which is fine. But they are very strongly led and undermined by very right-wing neo-Nazi forces in some other countries as well. We know on social media there's a very loud group of people who talk about right-wing issues, who post very sexist, misogynistic comments, fascist, and so on. So there is a group of people who are very active, but not. But of course, we do see active citizenship very much belonging to it, because there are still too many people who do not participate and who do not feel that they have an impact on their world. I think it's also called efficacy. So they don't think any of their actions has an impact on their lives or on society. And I think here it's really important also what adult learning can do, because the better you're informed, the better, you know, the better you can read, the better you can understand what's going around you, the more you have the ability to actually acquire the ability to have an impact. So I'm now moving to another project that we are involved in. It's a project on Bildung, and Svonka already mentioned it. We are starting from the German term, which goes back to Humboldt, and I have to say, in this case, German is more precise than other languages. Bildung is really a very holistic concept. It's not only education, you know, what you learn in school. It's definitely more than training. So it's really taking the whole person into account, and really takes, you know, when you grow up, the whole, you know, the whole process experience that makes you a person, and also continues for adults. Now, on that basis, we are now doing a project on the connection between Bildung and adult learning. And we have a researcher, philosopher, Lena Rachel Anderson, who has been working in this area for a long time, and has now written a context paper in that project. And you have the link on this page, which is very, very interesting, and which is an excellent introduction to Bildung on the one hand, but also the connection to adult learning. And here she has tried to put together a very good definition and explanation. I wanted to highlight that part of political freedom and democracy depend on a populace who have the Bildung that allows them to be actively participating in and contributing to democracy. People who can think for themselves and have the language to express themselves, individuals who have something to say and the voice and vocabulary with which to say it. So this is part of that concept. And she also mentions our collective and individual cultural meaning making. So I find that very interesting and encouraging. We make meaning out of our surroundings of our world. And once we have the voice, the vocabulary, and so on, we are able to actually then move forward. Okay, I'll do my little change. So, of course, those of you who have been working longer in adult education, or those of you who have studied andragogy will say, well, that's not that new. And of course, it isn't that new. If we go back to Paulo Freire, sort of the grandfather of empowerment through adult learning, we do have the concept of education never was and never will be neutral. We know that education comes from a certain background and always works in a context. And I mean, if we look at the history of schools, in many ways it was meant to teach the growing middle class, or teach working class people to read and write so that they would be better workers. It might be, I think in Austria, one of the reasons was to have better educated military and so on. So our education has a context, and very often it's been about keeping things as they are, continuing things as they are. But of course, Paulo Freire then says, we need to have, so I cannot be in the world decontextualized, simply observing life. You have to be involved, you have to be engaged, and you need to understand the conflict between the powerful and the powerless. And you need to, if you try to remain neutral, you are actually on the side of the powerful. And some of the examples, actually all of the examples that Katharina has given are actually very good, where you try and find a voice and, not be on the side of the powerful. Now, what's the teacher's role in the whole thing? And we become a bit more practical. And again, it goes back partly to Paulo Freire. So let me say, of course, what we're trying to do is taking things from the past, like Freire's concept, and there are other movements that have been empowering, the feminist traditions of learning and empowerment, human rights movements, civil rights movements, and so on. So we are actually on a very good basis of a lot of traditions. What we're trying to do is adapt the knowledge and the experience and the concepts to a world that is now very, very different, and take it into the future. So what's the teacher's role in that? And a colleague of ours, Carlos Ribeiro from Portugal, said it, it's the approach is, it's not doing something for people, for the learner, for, young people, but doing it with them. And that, of course, changes the methodology and the andragogy. And if you want to use a different terminology, and especially our colleagues in Ireland are very strongly advanced in that, and that is learner's voice. That means taking the experience, the needs of learners into account, so that would be learner-centered, but then also including people in shaping their learning themselves with the teacher, and to also include them in decisions. For example, when it comes to courses, in some cases we also have in Spain, we have a member who very much work with learners groups, also about decisions in the management and so on. So this is quite important. Now, I'm going back to principles from the Future Lab project, and it talks about dialogue-based learning. So between teachers, between learners. We're talking about learners as co-authors. I just mentioned that decision-making, the aims, a collaborative decision-making. Learning and activities are based on what learners need to improve a situation of social injustice and discrimination. Teachers support learners and institutions support teachers. And there is a strong emphasis on critical reflection. Now, I think, and if you look at your own experience, and I used to be a trainer too, you are probably, or your institution is probably doing a lot of these things. I mean, we had discussions with members before and partners. You are probably doing part of it, but it's very rare to have institutions, teachers, trainers who do implement, use the whole concept. And our aim in a way is that we really move more strongly in that direction. We are now very much at the achievable part of the achievable utopia, moving into that direction. We also worked recently on digitalization and democracy. We had a conference in November, and that, of course, is a very important topic. In a digitalized world, we need to look at democratic principles, and Katharina also already mentioned it. If you look at the World Wide Web at the moment, but also social media, a lot of it is actually a commercial space. It's run by the big tech companies and other approaches, and for us, I think it is very much also about public spaces and digital citizens. Now, our recommendations are coming out of the context paper that we wrote, and the discussions we had at the conference is recognizing non-formal, formal and non-formal adult learning as a key strategy. We think that adult education is, again, underestimated in what it can achieve. Yes, we can provide digital skills, and that is very important and still a key part, but we hope to get further and use adult education and the outcome of the knowledge and the discussions that can happen in adult education so that we can shape the digital world better. We are talking about promoting a confident and critical use of digital technology that supports well-being, active citizenship, inclusion, employability altogether. And we're talking about enforcing data transparency, access and security, and therefore engagement, representativeness, and really creating a public space rather than just commercial spaces. And of course, it needs to reflect on critically on the context behind it. You know, is it, well, I know they're not really tech, strictly speaking, tech people, but who pays taxes? Are we paying for people going into space? Is that how money should be used, etc., etc.? We're talking about extending digital competences. I think that is very clear, should include human rights and strengthen the rights approach. we should, for example, promote digital education, better funding of that within also communities, intergenerational learning and so on, creating synergies between literacy, digital skills, critical media thinking, making that inclusive and meaningful, and then ensure that everyone has access to education and training for digital skills, and really not only be users, clients, consumers, but really be citizens. So this is, I think, quite an important part of what we need to achieve or want to achieve in the future. I'm going to quickly show you an excellent example of a project that is dealing with that issue. We do have a Grundtvig Award. If you don't know that, have a look at it. Each year we give an award for excellent initiatives or projects. This year it was on the topic of digitalization and democracy. And one of the winners, of two winners for a European project, is EAAL. And I've used the screenshot of the free and open materials that are available. You have various publications on aspects like, for example, education and learning, but also if you want an introduction about the key issues, I can highly recommend it. I have to say, I understand I myself, and I think I'm fairly well educated, but I don't understand many of the issues about digitalizations, algorithm, and so on. I myself need to learn more about, and I think that is probably true of some other people. And so if you have anything, or if you want to work with that, please have a look at that. Really, really interesting and important. So I'm now moving to the concept of Bildung, and there is, for example, Bildung is the process as well as the result. It's a dynamic concept, knowing one's roots and being able to imagine and co-create the future. So here we are. It's wholesomeness. Bildung is not instrumental. It allows us to be fully humane and treat the planet and other species with their inherent dignity. So you can see we're back to a more utopian concept, but in a way, it is something that we should really try and achieve for ourselves, but also for the future of Europe, and go forward. Now, how does that connect with adult learning? We do have transferable knowledge, and that is something we are very much accustomed to in adult education, and we can put that together from our adult education experience. We know how to do that, and it should be about the world, how it is changing, and so on. Then Lene has identified the non-transferable knowledge and understanding, and who am I and who ought I be, where and how do I belong? And it's a different approach to teaching altogether. We will need a call for existing practices, explore the biggest obstacles, and identify the low-hanging fruits. So what is first easiest? What do you do first, which is already becoming clearer? It's about expansion of the sense of responsibility. So this is a concept that we're doing less in adult education, but how can we create together? And this is not something we can teach. I mean, I think it's very clear from the presentation that when we're talking about adult learning in that concept, we're not talking about teaching someone. It's more about having that dialogue, that critical reflection on how we can do that, and how can we integrate a sense of responsibility within an andragogical and adult teaching and learning perspective. So then, of course, we're also talking about civic empowerment, and this again is about teaching methods and so on. But here again, Lene says there's a rich tradition, and we went back to Paulo Freire. And as you said, I mean, people who have who come from a communist or other authoritarian regimes have probably learned a lot of how you come out of that, and how do you learn new concepts of democracy or different concepts of democracy. We can build on that. So let me quickly, I think I'm way beyond my time. I'm very sorry about that. But I'm coming now to an end of my presentation. I hope you have found it interesting, and I would really encourage everyone to continue with us that exploration of how we can achieve that transformation, how we can move forward in Bildung, how can we develop new methodologies based on what we already know, but to achieve the utopia we were talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gina, for this nice wide presentation. And I have to tell you that in chat, some people picked up the utopia. They picked up responsibility and also empowerment, nice words, all leading to a new world with a holistic vision of our communities, globally, nationally, whatever, an empowered individual, and so on. And at this point, and of course, basic skills literacy is actually a precondition for all of it. So we will continue at our institute, in our network of adult providers, for sure to foster this part of adult learning. Maybe you noticed I gave you the link to our website, and on the website we use the logo We Are EAAL, We Are Adult Learning and Education. And I think this holistic approach is based on both, on learning and education. So thank you, Gina, for this presentation. Thank you and all your colleagues for the excellent work in the field of advocacy for adult learning and education you are doing on behalf of all your members. We really value it a lot. And I will get back to you in order to find out how we can contribute to the Bildung project. It is still time. I think it's a 3-year project, and Slovenia should be there as well. Okay, thank you. But please stay with us. We have a Slovenian example, actually something.
Yes, thank you very much.
Something you suggested, to create a dialogue of those who work professionally with those who use the results of this professional work. So let's see and listen to our next presenters. It's the Cultural Society Prostorož.